so great to see Becca and Charlie and Chris tonight. Catch you all up. We're talking about the Dharma Paramita this week. As Charlie knows, we talked about the Paramitas in May, and there's just so much more. So here we are. Oh, and I wanted to show you all this. This was coming up. I was just thinking about this. This hangs outside over the sofa where you eat. One of many kanjis that I have hanging around because I like them. This one means once in a lifetime chance. Treasure every meeting, it will never recur. Something to keep in mind. All right, so tonight we'll talk more about the Dharma Paramita and then the next 3 nights aspects of it. And I feel like it can be really helpful. Most of us, perhaps all of us, are not Buddhist scholars. So in order for these concepts to really connect, they deserve this kind of attention, really getting into, what does that mean? And what does Paramita mean? And that's about a bodhisattva. What does that mean? They collect merit. What does that mean? And then getting to find out that all of those things are not, they don't have to be esoteric, unrelatable concepts. They're extremely relevant. And that's why we're taking our time with it. So this Dharma Paramita, the perfection of generosity, quality of mind of an extremely clear person who could be called a bodhisattva. But it's also something that we can practice. So, a little bit of background on the Paramitas for those who aren't familiar. It can help to see how this word perfection, Paramita, perfection, is pretty loaded in English. And there's nothing in this about expecting anyone to try to be perfect or get to be perfect. The Paramita part is like a description of like almost a mythological being. Like it makes me think of like black holes, like we believe that they exist, but we've never actually seen one. All the evidence is there, can describe it. There's, based on what happens around the places where we think they are. We all basically agree that there are black holes. I invite you to think of perfection like that. In theory, it's a thing. Its usefulness is just to be there as a concept to orient ourselves, our own growth, our own patterns. And so when you hear about each of these paramitas, then you can see how it could both be looked at as this, the perfection of might be like this, like a quality of mind that just exists, and then how it could also be a practice. So the practice part for generosity, for example, there's ordinary ways we can imagine that, like, I gave something that I was actually kind of attached to somebody because they needed it, and that was a generous act. Like that's a kind of a practice of generosity. But the perfection of generosity is something more like, I'm offering at least, just being extremely clear so that it's quite obvious that a thing needs to be done, so you simply do it with no thought of how great that makes me, or, how much I regret giving up that thing, or even how great it felt to give up that thing. So quickly then the others are patience or constancy. And again, we know a form of patience that we can practice, like intentionally, for example, sitting for 75 minutes instead of 25. The perfection of that being a natural, being consistent and steady. Ethical behavior, trying is certainly better than not caring, but the perfection of that might be something like, again, just that it's quite obvious when somebody's really clear about what's going on inside them and around them, that they couldn't take something that's not theirs. They couldn't knowingly deceive somebody. But not because of a sense of piousness or goodness, but simply because it doesn't make any sense anymore to do anything different. So that's just, to give you an idea of that continuum. It goes on with diligence, concentration, and wisdom are the last three. So there's this whole spread of, there are lofty ideas of each of these, and then there's something that we can actually do and practice. And I hope you can hear in that too that, since we all have a concept already, a way to anchor into all of these, that means that this already exists. This is a pre-existing condition, you might say, and one that can be uncovered and clarified so that it becomes easier and more in the direction of obvious. But I suggest that everything that you need for that, you already have. It's just a matter of paying attention. So these kinds of things, what drops off, the kinds of things that just, get in the way of seeing things as they are, would be things like worry, rumination, confusion, distraction. Really normal states of mind that I trust we're all familiar with. And the reason they drop away, it's not something magical. It might even feel magical sometimes, but it really is just logical. Probably most or maybe all of you have already experienced having a little stillness, sitting for a while and having some kind of aha moment where you just realize, oh, I've been trying to figure out this thing, I've been worrying about this thing, and the answer was right there all along. But just paying attention to almost anything at all, not even the thing you're trying to solve, just being focused, just being quiet, tends to make those things drop away. The worry, because it's about a future that you can't possibly predict with, anywhere near perfect accuracy. You just don't have enough information. Instead of that creating anxiety to think of that, like, oh no, I don't have enough information, it can feel more like, oh, then there's no reason at all to concern myself with things that aren't here for me to work on. And what that frees you up to do, it frees you up to see what is actually happening right now, which is really, really simple too. It's, what's happening right now is also not a mystery. It's, the air conditioning is on, the cat is here, there's people in the room, there's a moth somewhere, I haven't seen it lately. It's just what's happening right now. And that then extends to what you're doing for yourself in your life, how you're interacting with other people, as surely as under normal circumstances, you notice that somebody is about to step into the street with a car coming, and you do something about it. You pull them back, you warn them. You don't have to think about it, it's just obvious. And if somebody had said, "Oh, it's so generous of you, how you kept me from being hit by that bus," you might be like, "Well, if you say so." But it's just doing what's obvious. And this is, where the practice takes us in this Paramita and all of the others. So these things we often find confusing, like, speaking up or keeping silent, or, saying the right thing, saying the wrong thing, what's the right thing to do. Those kinds of ordinary actions become that obvious. Like, you have to give them as much thought as you would give pulling someone back from the street before they get hit by a car. And then you can imagine then what follows is how much energy, how much time is freed up when you're not having to almost constantly figure out what the next right thing is to do. What are you going to do with all that quiet and all that energy that's not needed when you just see things as they are? Okay, so that brings me to, this kind of describes this word bodhisattva, this radically unconfused, this radically unconfused person. Becomes second nature. So, traditionally, you may have heard this term being somebody who works for the benefit of others suffering. The story goes that, these are people who are so advanced in their path that they could enter nirvana and never have any difficulty or suffering again ever, but they choose to work instead for the benefit of all beings and refuse any gain of their own until everybody has the same thing. And you can hear how that's fantasy, right? That thing is unlikely to happen. A person refusing their own salvation so that until every single other person is free from suffering. But Zen in particular takes a really poetic view of all of these things and looks at these kinds of vows and legendary types of people as standing in for becoming free from the delusion that everybody needs to be saved. So that's another way of, oh, you are done because you just realized the job was made up in your head. That's another way to be complete. So the these are these people. A bodhisattva would be somebody who exhibits these perfections, these states of mind that are evident in the way they behave. So, certainly in their inner experience too. A trick for that would be, if they're so generous, that would also, it also has to mean that their motives are clean, which means not for martyrdom, not to collect merit, which is another word we'll make sure we're looking at clearly in a minute. But it was, in some schools there was a very powerful concept of merit, and there are similar things in our modern religions too. Collecting something, some kind of very, very special points, a star system for all the good deeds people do. A lot of political leaders in ancient times would, decide they were going to take up a religion, and then they would build a bunch of temples, and generally this was, not out of, just a sense of devotion alone, but because there was an idea that in these systems they were really collecting points called merit. And there's a great story. The scroll on the other side of this wall you can look at later is a calligraphy of the story of Emperor Wu, who they say Bodhidharma, who was at least they say, the monk who brought Buddhism from India to China. And so the emperor was, very excited to meet this guy. He had a lot of stature. You have stature, I have stature. We need to hang out and share stature. So he greeted him and then wanted to show off everything he had done, and asked him right away, look at all of these temples I've built, look at all of these amazing things I've done for your religion, how much merit do I get for this? And Bodhidharma said, no merit. And it goes on. There's a couple more things where he asked him, what's the nature of Buddhism? And he said, wide open, nothing holy. And then he finally said, who are you? And he, who do you think you are? And he said, I don't know. And he left. But each of these things he said were not that surface level meaning. The no merit, doesn't, in one sense, it could also mean because you did this for points, there's really no merit to it. But even on another level, you could say that it could mean, merit is all a figment of the mind. It's all part of the great delusion. And doing anything for merit immediately negates itself. So once we talk about those concepts then with, the bodhisattva and the merit, you can start, it gets us closer and closer to how there can be these practical instructions on how to, what to watch for to make it a practice that's interesting and alive in your own life. I did want to mention for one thing, this was something interesting that I came across last year when I was listening to somebody talk about dedicating merit. It's a really common practice in many traditions that they'll do a practice together, and then afterwards the facilitator will say, let's all dedicate our merit now, and then they all, listen while one person says a little thing like, if we have accumulated any merit, we give it back to all beings so that everybody can be awakened, or something like that. But they never really talk about why they do that. So anyway, I heard a speaker talk more about dedicating merit that I really appreciated, and led me to consider that more too. How, a beautiful idea behind that is like, this fail-safe against, hoarding. It's tricky. I just want to be careful because so many people have too little care for themselves. But there is such a thing as compensating in unskillful ways by, collecting some stickers for the ego. As everybody knows, I think, a person can have all kinds of insecurities and still have some habits that maybe they're like armor defenses that are built up with these little sweets for the ego of, well, but I'm very generous, so, I might be terrible at sitting, but everybody likes me, or, whatever it is. Those are the things that I want to carefully watch out for. It's a fine balance, isn't it? Because much more often, I don't know if it's more often or not. I think it's just subtleties. It's easy to watch the news and see some people doing some really horrific things. And I want to be careful that seeing that doesn't cause me to let myself off the hook for what I do. Oh yeah, so dedicating merit then, once I listened to this speaker, I really loved that idea, like just in case if, say you get through the 75-minute sit before dinner and you're like, yes, it's like, definitely celebrate, and then, you could also have a little practice of just in case I've collected any merit, I dedicate that to maybe someone that I had chosen, the person I was dedicating any merit I might have accidentally accumulated to my mother, because she's the most challenging person in my life. And it's like, who do I think, really needs and deserves all the clarity and ease that I would like, that I work for? It's like, she does. That's who. A recommended practice. So it's a way to, check for those. Oh yeah, I think I was just about getting into that. Okay. I was going to jump the gun and get into practice a little bit more. We'll get there in just a second. So something more about generosity then. This word dana means generosity. Some people who've gone to a lot of retreats might think that dana just means like giving money to the teacher, but it really just means generosity, and a person, can offer anything at all. They can offer their time, they can offer their moral support, they can offer their merit and never even tell you, many, many ways that dana can be offered. And something that is, really significant in kind of like the system of how Buddhism looks at life and spiritual progress is that they see it as the opposite of and an antidote to one of the three main poisons. So, Buddhism in general would say that there are three things that poison a person's life, and that's craving, aversion, and ignorance. And by ignorance they mean just lack of clarity with the nature of things. Craving and aversion are kind of two sides of the same coin, attachment that we mentioned last night. Craving meaning just I want, and I don't want to lose what I like, and I want to get more of what I like, or I want to get some of what I like. And aversion, avoiding. Not, an extreme form would be anger or hatred, but even just not turning towards what needs our attention, aversion. And so generosity, this is where it starts. Now, you thought it was exciting already, now it's really getting there. Is, this is where an intentional contemplation of working with generosity is an antidote to this. Noticing that, attachment is everywhere, craving and aversion is everywhere. Like even very natural things like I'm so tired, I want to sleep. I want my coffee. I don't want to feel this anxiety. I don't want to talk to this, person who snapped at me the other day. All of these things are like little thorns all inside our system. And these practices around generosity, it'll hopefully become even more clear over the next 3 nights, because we'll talk more about each type of generosity, where it's like, oh yeah, this softens up attachment over here, this softens up attachment over here. And how, yes, of course it feels better to have fewer thorns. But even more important, when not preoccupied with the pain of being full of thorns, you're freed up to have a more accurate view, and therefore more easily have skillful action in all situations. So I think I just wanted to reiterate that I'm framing, what we call generosity. Forgive me if I use we and it doesn't apply to you, but most people, I would say, think of might call something generous when they see a certain action. And I really want to tie that to clarity, that the way to experiencing the deep fulfillment of what others will call your generosity is not trying to be generous, it's working to be clear. And generosity is the natural byproduct of clarity. We get all these pointers. That's the helpful thing in practice then is, being able to notice the parts, noticing your inner reactions, being willing to pay attention to them, in a standard equation of giving and receiving, you could say there could be these three parts, a giver and something given and a receiver. And any of those you might be able to notice where there's a pull, like I want appreciation for this, or I need this person to be successful in order for me to feel okay. This is craving. Them not feeling okay is aversion. You're feeling about that. The thing that you're giving, my time, my material resources, whatever it is someone's giving, is there an attachment to that? Is it difficult to figure out what your relationship is to the thing that you think you're giving or you're considering giving? Watching for those signals in your body is clarifying. So that the gripping is the signature of attachment that you can watch for. And if you see worry, rumination, analysis, those are all signatures of confusion, because they all indicate a lot of thinking about something that is already presenting itself. Okay, so why would we want to release attachment? This comes up for me because I used to think about this a lot. I think when I first heard about this concept, it terrified me because I was, I was attached to my attachment, I liked having all my special relationships and I didn't want them to go anywhere. And the good news about that is that also turned out to be a great misunderstanding, which pretty much everything was a great misunderstanding. But why would we want to release attachments, It's this is such a confusion that comes out of such a good place, a caring, a wanting people to be well, wanting situations to be well, wanting the world to be well. And it's not an either or. It's not, you have to renounce the world and just work on yourself. We're not saying that. Something I love about Zen in particular is that it really embraces nuance and paradox and says, yeah, we're going to do all of it. We're going to do what we're called to do and accept that we might not be totally clear on it, and try to be clearer and face with humility that I don't know. Okay, so this attachment, what about this attachment with, our kids, people we love, causes that we love? I was thinking, maybe a useful analogy is to think of attachment, in the way we're talking about it. It's something like super glue, more than it is really about love. So the kind of attachment we're talking about you wouldn't, no matter how much you love your daughter, superglue yourself to her. It's like quite clear that that would be harmful and it would impede the other person's movement. If you tried to separate, it would hurt. This is the nature of the attachment that goes away. It's not necessary. And it's not only not necessary, but it's harmful. Because that attachment with all the need, like I need you to be okay, I need you to get to a certain point in the future, is all of those extra thoughts, extra energy that takes up so much space in the relationship, that overlays on top of the other person like layers of clouding films. To the extent that they're there, we cannot see the person in front of us. And as those get removed and you notice more and more the person just in front of you, you can still help them plan for their future. It's not a problem. It's just freed from the needing it to be a certain way, the narrowness of focus that limits the possibilities. So my hope here is just to, soften around the idea that there's something that you lose when attachments loosen, and what's lost is only what you would want to be lost. So, precisely in order to be more effective, release from attachment matters. Attachment's tools are manipulation and possessiveness. So those are the kinds of things that go. So this perfection of generosity. Here's something I came across that I tucked away from myself. This perfection of generosity would mean it doesn't matter to me at all whether someone is thankful for what I've given. And this is a good litmus test to see where I still have work to do. So we can look at that in regard to each type of dana over the next few days. And then ultimately this, we talked about these three poisons: craving, aversion, and ignorance. And that not knowing, the ignorance you could also call delusion or the great misunderstanding. I tend to use the word misunderstanding. Can be seen, the giving and receiving can be seen all as one thing, because you can't give if there's no one or nothing receiving. Giving to what? It's all one thing. The giving, the given, the receiver, all one thing. To the extent this is known so clearly that it's not a thought, but it's just seeing clearly that there is no separation. And that is the Dharma Paramita.